I'm going to share with you all of my F124 settings. I originally did this video at the start of F124, but now I'm going to do an updated version after many hours, many months, and many races completed on this year's iteration of the Formula 1 game so far, to show you what's helped me gain speed, confidence, and just go generally faster as well, hopefully with the target to make you faster and more confident as well. So with that being said, the first page we're going to jump straight into is the force feedback. I think pretty much most people are in this video to see the force feedback settings, to be honest, so that's why I'm doing this as my first part of the video. And we're going to be jumping straight into the calibration settings, and I have my steering weight to 100%, and then everything else is set to 0. The reason that the settings are set to 0, and to explain it in a bit more detail for you, is to do with the dead zones and linearity settings that you can be utilizing to your own performance. So for example, a dead zone setting, if you set it to 5% here, if you can see now I have 5% set in game, that means 5% of the starting throttle position has now been nullified and will not be active when pressing it. This can be useful if you're, for example, dragging your foot over the pedal in the braking zones, or constantly having some sort of throttle input in places that you don't want to be doing it. For example, braking, turning in the middle of the apex are the most common causes of this. So if you see that you're overriding the throttle and using it in places you don't mean to be using it, you can use a dead zone setting to help nullify that and help it just be assisting you along your way. I like to have it on 0 because I don't personally have this issue at the moment, so I don't need to be using that setting to any advantage or disadvantage. A very powerful setting is the linearity setting, actually, and effectively what this is doing, in a very quick summary, because it's such an advanced and powerful tool, when you have it set to, let's say, 50% here that I'm going to go to in game, it will make the first half of the pedal travel longer and the second half of the pedal travel shorter in a natural consequence. And how this is powerful and why this is powerful is to do with basically making the first half of your throttle input less sensitive, and you have more travel on the throttle to play with, and this means you can be more delicate on the initial throttles, especially out of low speed corners or in rain conditions especially. The downside of this is it can take longer to get to 100% power in high-speed corners, so it's good to find a balance. And if you're constantly struggling with feeling the throttle or having wheel spin out of low-speed corners, you can start bumping up this setting higher and higher, and this will just give you a little bit more to play with on the throttle. And the same is true on the brake linearity setting as well, that the more that you have it up, the longer the first half of the travel is on the brake pedal and the shorter the second half is, and effectively just giving you more to play with on the initial braking. And especially trailing off it as well can be more comfortable. With that being said, jumping into the actual vibration settings, then that's going to be on 65, because basically anything above 65 can lead to force feedback clipping. And if you don't know what force feedback clipping is, that's when the motor exceeds its actual ability and the game exceeds its actual ability to giving out detail to what's happening on the racing surfaces and the tire physics of the game. This can happen when you're spiking over curbs, having oversteer, or in general driving forces in extreme situations as well. And basically, although you don't have a force feedback meter in this year's game, it's also just something that I've tested, and I've had confirmation from people behind the scenes that having it at 65 can be a good balance, that you have good detail in your force feedback and not having it being nullified by having clipping as a natural result. On track, rumble, off track, pit stop, and wheel dampers are all set to 0, quite simply because anything at 0 is how the signal was originally meant to be told and felt, and anything above 0 is actually still a boosted signal, so it's amplified in many ways. Having it on 0 means you still will feel the curb effects, but it's not going to be boosted and it's not going to be a distraction. This is probably the biggest element that's quite different to a lot of people. I actually ran this setting in the 2018 and 2019 Formula 1 Esports World Championships as well. I went away from it in the previous games, but came back to it this year's game as well. What's quite odd compared to other people's driving, because everyone likes to be running between 300 and 340 on the wheel, whereas I'm running 420, and that's mainly just because I want to have a bit more feeling with the wheel, and I like to have too much steering lock to play with rather than too little. I don't really like having that go-kart feeling with a car where you have to turn so little and you get a massive result out of it. I want to play with the steering wheel and really work with my trail braking to rotate the car rather than being very harsh on the car with stabby inputs, and that's why my steering rotation is at 420. With that being said, this is my button scheme, and I won't go and tell you exactly all the buttons quite simply because it will take forever, and I want to keep this video as short as possible to be condensed for you at home. So feel free to take a screenshot and to be just working with this at home as well. Something that I do have is, of course, just some easing settings to help basically make it as easy as possible while driving, and that's going to be my brake bias, differential, and ERS modes increase and decrease as a shortcut, so I can just get to them quicker and that it will be much more easy. Again, I wouldn't always recommend just copying my settings one for one on this page, to be honest. It's all about how you position your thumbs and your fingers and how you want to be comfortable with your racing wheel. Whereas if I'm on the Fanatec, for example, we have the rotary switches that I have on my right thumb to my brake bias and my left thumb to my differential, and that can just be making it a bit easier for me to change between the corners. Then, of course, my ERS up and down has been mapped as well. You see that I have the yellow triangle next to the ERS increase mode. That's quite simply just because I also have it as my manual pit stop button. If we go earlier into the page, if I can try and find it for you, yeah, you can see my manual pit stop is also set to the same button as my ERS increase, quite simply because I don't need the ERS in the pit lane, and it's a much more easy button to access while getting into my pit stop window. With that being said, now we're going to be jumping over to my graphical settings, and of course we're going to be running ultra low settings generally across the game, as it's just faster. It's more easy on the PC as well, especially while streaming and recording videos. Of course, if you want a bit more detail, then you can turn it to high and ultra high, but for me, having it on low is just a better solution. The one thing that is really important within the settings though is having the NVIDIA Reflex turned to on if you're on the PC platform of the game. The reason that this is important, as this just makes the latency a bit lower and the steering will be a bit quicker to react in the game as well because of this. Another thing that is extremely critical is to have your particles turned off if you're on the PC platform of the game. What this is going to stop doing is having the tire smoke from the cars ahead lingering around on the track, what is extremely annoying and off-putting to the driving, especially while we're following each other so closely on this year's iteration of the game. And yeah, basically as well with the rain, the raindrops won't be on your screen and just make it easier to drive in the rain conditions. Now just going into what my video settings are, I'm going to be running, of course, these settings, so feel free to take a screenshot, and this is just going to be helping you to hopefully get a bit smoother gameplay and a bit more graphical improvement while driving around as well. I would go higher on my refresh rate on my monitor, but I only have a 170Hz monitor, so of course it's capped out. And generally the higher refresh rate that you can do, the better. So that's something I would advise as well. VSync off as well. That's something I've noticed in my career, that having it off can just make less latency while driving. So yeah, feel free to take a screenshot. Those are my graphical settings in the F1 game. Motion blur turn to 0 as well. My camera customization settings, and I have recently switched from using TV pod offset to normal TV pod and a bit more zoomed out on the field of view. The reason for doing this is the racing is just so chaotic at the moment, especially in league racing. To have the availability to use my mirrors, you won't be able to see the bottom right. Well, that was lovely. Oh, that was a good save, actually. So, basically, using the mirrors on the bottom left and the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Of course, you can't see it on the bottom right because my webcam is in the way. My apologies. But basically, being able to use the mirrors while driving can be a bit more efficient than looking back. And of course, so many people are just making dive bombs and making really erratic overtakes at the moment, because how high the slipstream is and how little the dirty air is. So good ability just to glance in the mirrors is going to be very useful for me while racing people. Whereas when I use my other camera angle, you can see the mirrors are barely in the field of view shot. So it becomes a bit more difficult to react to people and understand where people can be on the track as well. There is a benefit to using this super zoomed in field of view. If we just slow it down, we'll let Norris go. We'll try and let Piastri go as well. And then what we'll do is just basically slow it down on the apex. And you can see the track is far more zoomed in than using the normal TV pod. And this can help a little bit with using the white lines and being maximum on your track usage. Of course, with the downside of having less ability to see marker boards that are further away from the track and or racing other cars as a natural consequence. So yes, I do like to use TV pod now compared to offset TV pod. And that is my settings for TV pod. Of course, camera shake and camera movement set to 0, as low as possible. And then when I'm using offset TV pod, these are my settings as well. Not that I use it, but this is also my cockpit settings. And then you can see me just driving a little bit with it now. Feel free to take the screenshot because I don't want to make the video 5 years too long. But this is basically my cockpit settings. Of course, my HUD is a little bit in the way at the moment because it's set up for when I'm using a TV pod. But yeah, very nice just to come in here and actually just drive a little bit for fun and not to be too stretched out. You know, it's good to just drive the game for a bit of fun sometimes, even if that is in the cockpit. Speaking of my HUD settings, we're going to be jumping into that right now. And you can see this is what my baseline thing is, my baseline page, I should say. My delta time is turned off quite simply because I can see it on my steering wheel. So I don't actually need to be looking to the top right hand side of the screen, and it just becomes a distraction, to be honest. Whereas I can look at my steering wheel, have all the information I need, and that can just be very nice for me indeed. This is going to be my customization page. Of course, I had the virtual mirror turned off. I have basically the positions on the top left hand side of the screen, and that is set to 64% on the scale, the same as the lap counter is set to 66%. Looking further around the menu, I can have my general HUD for my gears era set to 50% scale, so it fits nicely on top of the halo, and that is also going to be reflected within my track map on the bottom left hand side of the screen. That is zoomed down to 93% just to make it a bit more to accurate scale and useful to me when driving. And that is also reflected within my timing pillar on the top right hand side of the screen. It's down to 75% just to make it fit into the screen, and I can have maximum of the screen focused on the racing that I need to do. Of course, this page looks super clustered because it's showing everything that it can be using in the game right now. But yeah, a lot of these things are turned off, as you can see when I'm driving. My safety car and basically general information is set to 100% because I want it to be quite obvious when it comes out, when the safety car happens, or when I do a track invalidation, and it's something that I will never miss, and that means I lower my chance of getting a corner cut penalty during a race. I want to discard the changes because I don't think I made any. My audio settings are going to be set for my master volume to 5. This is purely so when I'm having my actual PC volume at 100%, this is going to be meaning that at 5 is the optimal level. That way I don't have to keep on fiddling around my PC volume versus my engineer's volume as well. The effects are set to 100, the speech is set to 100, the music is set to 0 because I just don't really like to listen to music from the game before the races. Other cars are set to 100 or 10, I should say, purely because then I can hear them and race them a bit easier, even if I can't see them. Voice chat set to 10, just because it's funny sometimes in open lobbies, to be honest. Broadcast onboard mix is for me the best one and gives me the best clarity of the engine noises while I'm racing as well. Subtitles turned off because I just don't want to see the words on the screen. And then you can take a screenshot of everything else. My audio is set to ultra high, just to make the audio clarity a bit better when racing as well. Looking for every bit of an upshift advantage. Upshift advantage, that doesn't make any sense. Looking for every bit of an advantage, even if that is on the upshifts. And then my radio responses are set to responses only because, to be honest, I find it quite annoying going through a corner and being told you have 5 laps of fuel left. I don't care, I'm on my qualifying lap. So I want it on responses only, and that way I don't get mad at the in-game engineer. And then you can see the rest of it is just very easy just to take the screenshots of. Upshift tone is turned off again, just because I find the beep annoying, and the formation lap sensor is turned on because it can be helpful beeps, actually, ironically, compared to what I said about the upshift tone, to help you guide you into your pit lane stall. Going through the rest of the settings, that is the rest of the audio setting as well. And of course, my assists are all turned off, as that is what's only allowed in F1 sim racing. So hopefully everyone found this video very useful, very helpful to see sort of an updated version of the game since the original release, and maybe can help you improve, because ultimately this is what I want a lot of this channel to be, highlights and really just showing how I can help myself to be better, and hopefully that can help you be better as well. And I always want to have 100% clarity to you as well at home, of course, in the realms I can, because I can't show my setups, for example, because I'm working with Sauber and everyone behind the scenes to make sure that we're ready for the F1 Sim Racing Championship. And if I just start showing my setup, then every other team can have it. So within the realms of what I can show you without hindering my performance at F1 esports, I'm truly doing my best, and I really hope that you can find value in these videos, and hopefully you enjoyed them as well. So with that being said, grazie ragazzi, thank you so much everyone for watching, and yeah. I know people are going to ask about F1 esports in the comments. Oh, we're on low fuel mode. Yeah, I know people are going to ask about F1 esports in the comments, and I can't really say much because it's not my place to say, but it's looking good.